everyone, welcome live to 3Y TV and tonight's broadcast of the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series for the Duels at Daytona. The road to Premier Duels, I should say. And I'm Peter Short, and joining me in the booth here tonight for the first time, and probably the only time this season, alongside me, AJ Digby. AJ, you're locked in the show next week here at Daytona for the big one. The Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series, start of the season. But you just get to sit back, relax, and watch the show here tonight. These are going to be two good duel races.
Yeah, it should be a very exciting show here tonight. It's a pleasure to be back in the booth, kind of where I started with ASRS, and got into the broadcasting side with you guys. Figured out that I really liked the league and wanted to be a part of it. Ran the last half of last year, got qualified into this year, and so I get to enjoy Daytona for once and not be nervous up here in the booth over watching the speedway. But this is kind of also going to be a good time for me to get a little bit of prepared on how people are going to drive and looking ahead into next week when we go for the big granddaddy of them all at Daytona.
Yeah, absolutely going to be a preface for what we're going to see next weekend with a lot of cars out there on the racetrack. We are going to have drivers locking themselves in via qualifying. 6 drivers will lock themselves in with a top 6 time here in Midwest Simulations Polo Qualifying, which has actually just started right now as you see the number 89 machine going out there onto the racetrack for the first time this season. You see Jeff Yenish right there from Tampa, Florida, headed down the backstretch in his Toyota, going up onto the high banks for the first time. And I'll tell you what, AJ, we're going to see a lot of these drivers on their out lap run right up against the wall to get as much momentum for their qualifying lap.
Yeah, pretty much from the moment that you cross that blue pit exit line, you want to run up above that white striped line that you'll see as close to the wall as possible without worrying about touching it, because obviously any little touch will slow you down. And you'll run like that for the second half of the out lap, the whole first lap, and then just driver's preference on when to cut down to get down to the bottom for that second lap, where you'll run as close as you can to the yellow line without going underneath.
Yeah, and you see Danny Gutierrez right there, one of the new drivers here this season in the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series. And folks, Hacksaw PC's, I am sporting my brand new Hacksaw PC. Just turned it on for the first time today. Absolute awesome working with those folks over at Hacksaw PC's. And I got to say, great series sponsor. We're on board last year here as we crowned last season's champion. And here they are again this year, which is definitely going to be a great year on hand. And AJ, I think the big question for all these drivers, including these drivers right now in qualifying, is how are they going to beat Greg Evans this season?
Yeah, Greg Evans was really good last year. I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but a lot of wins, definitely a very tough driver to contend with. But overall, it's a very talented league, top to bottom, and week in, week out, it was Greg Evans at the front, but there was always different people up there challenging with him. And I think the drivers are definitely going to be coming in a little bit more prepared, have a little bit more practice time in. And we saw, I felt like almost as the year went on, there was more and more challengers to him. He was able to come away with the league win, but it was a close battle down to the wire during the playoffs.
Yeah, that is for sure. There's Grant Brown, the 00 machine out there. Sparko on the hood of that Toyota Camry, working his way now on the bottom side of turn number 3 and 4, coming to the stripe here to put in his qualifying lap time. That Toyota Camry looking very good. A lot of new paint schemes in the field here tonight, AJ, and I'm sure when you get out there on the racetrack next week, you're probably going to have that in mind. A lot of different drivers to kind of keep in the back of your head throughout the entirety of the race.
Yeah, this week it allows me to be able to see a couple different drivers, a couple different paint schemes, how they run, who to look out for, some bright colors possibly that could be people to look for. But overall, this is a great chance for me to be able to scout that. And then when you're in the car, you don't get the same type of views. When you're in the car, you're really only seeing the backs or the fronts or sometimes the sides of these other cars. So it's going to be good to be able to get a bird's eye view here in the booth tonight and prepare myself for next week. And like you said, a whole lot of new paint schemes, some people within new teams, new paints, including myself, and just exciting to have this many people in the league, interested in the league, and then all the different sponsors that are on board for the league and the individual cars.
Yeah, that is definitely true. I'm very much looking forward to this season, which goes pretty much all the way through 2021. We talked a lot about 2020 last year and how crazy of a year it was. 2021, folks, it is going to be a good year, and you're going to want to stay here with 3Y TV all season long for all the Hacksaw PC's ASRS action, because if there's any indication on what we saw over the last 2 seasons right here on 3Y TV, this is going to be one stellar year. It's been getting better and better year after year, and of course, as ASRS moves towards its 20th year in operation with the Premier Cup Series, as you see Nick Gardner there going across the line, you see times there on the left-hand side of your screen already rolling in with Jeff Yenish atop the board. And folks, I have seen the Yenishes right here on 3Y TV in the past. They are 2 very, very good drivers, and AJ, they're 2 that I'm going to be looking out for, not only here tonight, but over the season.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about them. Me, myself, being newer to the league, haven't had much exposure to them, but we had a fun kind of practice race last week, which was a good chance to get out there and drive around with some of these drivers. And the Yenishes, Eckhart, a couple of these guys, a lot of these newer drivers are very good, very talented. It'll be interesting to see where they slot in with the rest of the remaining ASRS competition that is coming back from last year.
Yeah, that is for sure. And of course, if you're just now joining us and you're new to ASRS, this series, this group of people, it is the oldest series in iRacing. A lot of people think, well, you can't have that old of a series in iRacing. Well, yes, you can. This is the oldest league. They have the oldest running league that is still in the iRacing service. That wasn't one of the test leagues that iRacing set up back in the day. No, this is the oldest running iRacing league, and that adds to the prestige of the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series, and really going to be awesome to see this all season long. As you see right there, good look of turn number 4 right here at Daytona, the entry down to pit road. That's going to be a very busy place here tonight, especially if we get green flag pit stops, AJ.
Yeah, I'm not totally positive how long the fuel goes. I probably should have looked that up based on how that practice race went. But I do know in that practice race, we had about a 50-lap race, a couple cautions here and there. I want to say fuel was somewhere in the 30-lap range. So if it is all green, there definitely could be some green flag stops. If not, I would expect a couple people to come down in a little bit earlier to top off, especially with this only being a 40-lap race. And if there was a lot of cautions, you could get some people that could try to stretch it out to the end. The biggest area where you will see green flag stops will be next week when we have the 250-mile Daytona race. Green flag pit stops were a huge factor of the Daytona and Talladega races last year. How you get in and off of pit road, whether you're off of pit road with some drafting buddies, things like that, all were a major factor at the end of the race when we had a long green flag run to get down towards the end of the race last year.
Yeah, that is for sure. Definitely going to be a fun one here tonight at Daytona. But I'll tell you what, AJ, as the clock ticks down here in qualifying, every single driver here has put in a time trying to lock themselves in with a top 6 run. Jeff Yenish, John Eckert, Larry Oren, Clarence Bonner, Nick Curling, Jackson Van Volkenberg, those 6 drivers, we know that they will advance to next week's big show right here at Daytona to kick off the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series. Those drivers are feeling good, but all the other drivers a little bit further back in the pack, they are going to be on edge because they're going to have to race their way in. As you can see, there aren't a lot of spots on the line here tonight, AJ. We've already got X number of drivers already worked their way into next week's race based off of their premier standing. But it's going to be interesting. We got drivers that we're going to have to keep an eye on all night long to figure out who's going to work their way in. We got Corey Silva in the number 94 machine. We know he's fast in that car. We have Evan Black. We know that he's fast. Definitely a lot of drivers towards back of the field. Jared Haggerty, a winner last season. Grant Brown, who's always working his way up through the field here in the series. And a lot of new names trying to get themselves into their first ever Premier Cup Series race.
Yeah, lots of speed up and down this lineup here for tonight for the duels. A lot of names that are familiar, a lot of names that are new, and it'll be very interesting to see how they drive it. There's so many different ways that you can try to drive Daytona. Ultimately, they have to be in the top 8 of each heat to advance, and then the next 6 fastest times here from qualifying. So like you said, those top 6 right now, they're automatically in. The people behind them could be in, even if they're not in the top 8, based on if one of those top 6 people places in the top 8 of each of their heats. So a lot of things that can shake up and change over the course of the night with who makes it in, who doesn't make it in. But ultimately, top 8s, that's going to be, if you're top 8, you're safe, you're in. And so that's where drivers are going to be hunting tonight. And you'll see some drivers who will try to push, try to be at the very front nearly the whole race. And then you'll probably have some drivers who will hang back, expecting, hey, there might be a caution, but I'm going to hang back, try to stay in the draft, and then try to make a late move. We'll see tonight, because obviously you don't want to get caught up in a caution, because that will basically take away your top 8 chance.
That is for sure. Just 27 seconds left here in the session for us to figure out exactly when we will go green and who will start where. But I think with everyone already put their qualifying lap time in, you can already start to figure that out here, folks. We're going to have the 2 duels here tonight, and there are folks playing along at home, drivers who are already locked into the show here tonight. They got a little bit of a duel bingo here tonight that they're going to be playing. So I've got my sheet. I'm going to be mindful of what I say. I'm going to try and not give you folks at home all the answers and give you too early of a bingo. So keep that in mind. I got a lot of people, I'm sure, groaning right now. But the good news is, don't groan for too long, because the qualifying session is over. Jeff Yenish is going to pick up the Midwest Simulations Pole Award here for the Daytona Duels here. Not going to be the full pole sitter next week at Daytona, but definitely going to be the fastest here. And AJ, why don't you take us through tonight's starting lineups for duel number 1?
Yeah, so what I am noticing here is the first of all, the qualifying order looks like it's based on the total qualifying results. So that row 1 that you're seeing, row 2 that you're seeing, needs to be split up. So everybody's on your left side will be in heat 1, everybody on your right side will be in heat 2. But Jeff Yenish put in the fastest time to start first here in heat 1. Starting second in heat 1 will be Larry Orn with the 3rd fastest time overall. Nick Curling will come off 3rd in heat 1, with Nick Gardner coming out in 4th, Steve Yenish in 5th, and John Eckrich coming along in 6th in heat 1.
Yeah, and then you got a couple cars further back. Mark Myers will be rolling off 7th in heat number 1. Michael Lark rolling off 8th. Anthony Pelican in 9th. Adam Hoagland 10th. Joshua Biddle in 11th. Kevin Klein in the number 4 machine rolling off 12th. Jared Haggerty 13th. Todd Kirkwood 14th. And then 15th, Jonathan Holstein, and 16th, and the last car to start in the first of today's duels, Adam Blattel in the number 7 machine. And I gotta say, in that list of people, the number 4 machine, Kevin Klein, him and I, we go back to the NASCAR Racing 2003 days. I know this series, the American Sim Racing Series, goes back to NASCAR Racing 2003 series. And I think it's funny because when I mentioned Kevin Klein, I reached out to him on Facebook and I said, you know, this is crazy. We raced each other when we were basically kids back, 10 years ago. Plus now, probably 12 years ago now. And here we are meeting again out there on the racetrack. So the sim racing community, folks, is not a big one. It's relatively small. You run into people that you've seen before quite a bit. And great to have Kevin Klein in tonight's field. But he's going to have a little bit of work to do starting from the 12th position if he wants to qualify for next week's Daytona Hacksaw PC race right here on 3 Wide TV. But we're looking right up at the front of the field. The fastest man in qualifying there, AJ, and picking up the Midwest Simulations pole, the number 89 machine of Jeff Yenish, as he's about to get set to get us underway for the 2021 Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series.
Yeah, this was a long-seeming off-season, especially as a driver who could not wait to get back out onto the track. And I know these guys are feeling the same way. And here we are going green flag at Daytona, kicking off the ASRS season in 2021.
And it's a good start right up at the front of the field. They do have to wait for the green flag to drop before they hit the loud pedal. Jeff Yenish, that inside line, not formed up as the number 10 machine running right behind, was running right behind him. That was Nick Curling, just did not get going, but that did allow Larry Orn and the number 31 to slot down in front, as if in front of Nick Curling and behind Jeff Yenish right here at the front of the field. But that number 31 machine, is he going to jump up to the top side? Because that high line starting to get a little bit of steam there with the number 16 mobile, Nick Gardner.
Yeah, Nick Gardner getting a good push from Scott Eckrich down the backstretch, allowing him to get up into the provisional lead here through 3 and 4. That outside line, we found a lot of speed in our practice fun race that was going on. But once you get up even, iRacing has turned up the aerodynamic wash and feel from each of the cars. So once that outside line gets up there, it takes the blunt of that force. But right now, getting a great push from the 70 car of Scott Eckrich up the outside to keep these two lines even early on.
Side by side, Nick Gardner leads the first lap unofficially of the season. It isn't really the official start of the season until next week right here at Daytona, but at least for now, Nick Gardner going to get his nose out front and even clear the number 89 of Jenisch as they go off into turn number 3 and 4. But Jenisch fights back down there in his Toyota Camry, and we maintain 2x2 here in the first few laps. There is a little bit of a blinker a little bit further back in the pack. Not sure who that is back there, trying to see exactly who that might have been. It might have been Jared Haggerty in the number 6 machine, but he's going to stay right down there on the yellow line. Meanwhile, back at the front continues to be side by side as that time by. Jeff Jenisch was the driver who got to the stripe first. That number 89 machine, great looking paint scheme on that car, and I'm sure we're going to see a couple of these paint schemes evolve over the season. You see a lot of drivers out there who don't have any sponsors on their car here, AJ, and of course that's one of the things here in this series. You actually have to have a sponsor, or at least have a sponsor sign off on giving you permission to use their name on your race car in order to be here at the American Sim Racing Series with a car, much like that Tampa SUVRentals.com Toyota Camry right there of Jenisch.
Yeah, cars do need to have sponsors or have them sign off. You can't just pop in any old paint from Trading Paints that you want. I mean, you could, but you'll get a paint violation by the league ownership and be forced to change that by the next week. So lots of these guys that don't have a sponsorship or don't have a group of people that they usually run with often will have these blank looks saying, hey, look, my car's open. You can come and sponsor me. So if anybody's watching this and is somebody who is interested in sponsoring or knows somebody who might be interested, you can contact some of these drivers, as we have 3 of these cars up in the front 4 that do not have a sponsorship. But currently we are 2x2 basically through the field, multiple surging back and forth from each group, but a strong push continually from the 70 car of Scott Eckrich. Those two are actually going to drop down into the bottom lane and take the lead for the moment. But that outside line was a little bit better formed up in the front 3, as the 3 car of Michael Larch was the 3rd car in that outside line, and he was tucked up a little bit closer than the number 10 of Nick Curling has been, and that allowed that outside line to get a little bit of a better push and clear the inside line to them to be able to come down and take the lead. As like we said, top 8 is what matters, but we are only 5 laps into this 40-lap Heat 1.
Yeah, as they work their way coming out of turn number 4, they will complete the 5th lap. 35 laps to go now to determine which of these drivers will make their way into next week's race. Checking on the chat here. Michael Krobach is in the chat. Alan Young in the chat saying, watch that number 73 come from the back. Jim Foose in the chat as well saying that they extended the race to 50 minutes. Hopefully we don't have to get anywhere close to the 50-minute marker. Hopefully we get a lot of green flag racing here in this duel. We do have Jason Stewart, the DMLC Racing Channel, saying, known Danny Gutierrez for a long time, and we thank each and every one of you for joining us here on 3Y TV. Make sure you make yourself heard in the chat here as we turn the first laps of the season. Great to be back here on 3Y TV, and we'll see what's going on right here up the front of the field as we tick off yet another lap with Nick Gardner continuing to lead.
Yeah, he's had a great pusher from Scott Eckrich so far early on in this race, and you can see Scott is backing off a little bit, trying to get some air onto that nose, because overheating and a blown engine is very much a real thing, very much can happen if you're sucked up too much. So every now and then that second place car will have to back off or slide to the right or left and get a little bit of open, clean air onto that car, which will slow down that line. But so far we're seeing a very orderly 2 lines here, both giving each other a little bit of room. There's kind of room front to back other than the very front guys who are trying to surge forward or backward, but everybody's trying to give each other room, make it through the race. Currently 16 cars in this Heat 1. Only 8 of them will advance for sure onto the next round. So these guys just trying to make it towards the end of the race as much as possible. And you kind of can see too, it's tightened back up into 2x2, but towards the back of the pack, a couple of these guys are just enjoying just kind of giving a little bit of gap, especially that orange and blue car of Adam Blattel. These guys just not really worried about pushing it. Joshua Biddle down on the inside as well, just trying to give a little bit of room, be able to see the pack in case something does happen. There's nowhere really to go right now, especially early on in this one. So they're content just sitting there and letting the laps pass by. We have also gotten in the chat, I said probably about 30 laps. I was told about 34 in the chat by Michael Krobach. So thank you, Michael, for that help. So 34 laps, if this thing does stay green, fuel economy or pit stops could become a very real thing of this, and even for one caution could become a thing of this.
And of course, AJ, you're going to need to know that number for next week right here on 3 Wide TV when you'll be out here on the racetrack. But at least for right now, things relatively calm. I don't expect them to stay this calm for this long, because as this race continues to go on, action always ramps up here at Daytona. But if you're Adam Blattel or Joshua Biddle back there towards the back of the field, you're just thinking the big one might happen in front of you. We talk about the big one every time we go to a super speedway. We haven't seen it here tonight. Hopefully we don't see any of the big ones here at all night long. But, if you're some of those drivers a little bit further back in the pack, you might just be thinking about saving your stuff because you only need to be up there in the top 8 at the end of the race.
Yeah, you only have to be up there at the end of the race. And a part of the reason that I tend to drop back and see who's just kind of hanging out the back is that tends to be where I go strategy-wise. And the Will Warsler guys who I practiced with last year and now am on the team with for this year, we did a really good job of that last year at Daytona where we just kind of rode in the back, let everybody do their thing up at the front, and then everybody got single file so they could drop down into pit road and we were able to slingshot along the outside. I don't expect that to be as strong this year with the aerodynamic change with the cars within iRacing, but just being able to hang back in the back, there's usually going to be a wreck or two, so you really don't have to move forward until about 10 to 5 laps left, depending on how far away you are. I mean, this has already been a long green flag run of only 11 laps, so there's a lot of time to be able to move forward and backwards throughout the field over the course of the race, so there's no need to push. As we can see, even up at the front, these guys are giving each other a decent amount of room. Overall, most people look like they're trying to file down onto the bottom line and log some laps in.
Yeah, and I don't blame them. You just want to get some laps on the board here. Let's see if we can ride on board with one of the drivers a little bit further back in the pack here because it'll just give you a little bit of an indication, folks watching at home. Let's see if we can jump on board with the number 6 machine of Jared Haggerty as he is working. Here we go, on board with him, running right behind the number 86 machine of Todd Kirkwood, I believe that is. And you can see just these cars kind of, I'd say they're snaking down the backstretch. You have the leader, and it's the leader's job to hold a line, and then really the car is second in line as the driver trying to push that line forward. But then third on back, you're just snaking, AJ. You're trying to follow the car in front. As you can see the 86 there of Kirkwood. He now drifts up a little bit. Now he comes back down to the yellow line, and watch again. At some point, he's going to drift back up. And now he's right on the yellow line. So they're just going to kind of move around down these straightaways. And AJ, that's just an indication of how difficult it is to see through the car in front of you. I know here we're actually on the roof cam, so you can actually see a little bit better in front of the car. But when the driver's, a little bit further down, right in the driver's seat, very, very difficult. So you're trying to follow that car and reactionary to the car in front of you.
Yeah, what you said is exactly right. This in-car view is a little bit better here with the gyro cam. It is a little bit of a better thing of what you see. When you're on the straightaway, all you can see is that car ahead of you and maybe a car to the outside of you. When you're in the corner, you might be able to see a couple cars up depending on how far back you are. But all you have as reference are really the yellow line down to the inside and then the car that's ahead of you. So the more that he is wishy-washy in front of you, the more that it essentially chains itself as a snake, as you said, back further into the pack. So far, people are doing a great job of giving room, so you're also not as twitchy, you're not as tense. When you're in a tight end of the race situation, you're a little bit more tense, and it tends to become even more twitchy. But as you can see here from the in car, once you get into the corner, if that car ahead is right in front of you, you really can't see much other than just a couple of liters ahead of you. It makes it really tough to see, and that's part of the reason that you kind of want to almost stick in the back and leave a little bit of breathing room. So then when you're in the corner, you can see ahead of you. You can see if there's a wreck coming along, especially if you're in one of that midfield cars and you're up close behind somebody, you cannot see a thing. But yeah, you did a great job of describing that snake action that there really is when you're in these restrictor plate, or I guess super speedway races now.
A couple of drivers currently 1-2 from the state of Ohio, as Michael Larch and Nick Gardner are 1-2 as of right now, and they're continuing to battle side by side in the number 3 and the number 16. You see him right there at the front of the field. That number 3 of Larch really trying to do work up there on the high side. And another thing that we often see at these surface speedways, AJ, is, oh man, getting a little bit close there right through the tri-oval, is what I like to call the accordion effect. And you usually see it on the inside line because you scrub a little bit more speed, turning the wheel just a little bit more on that inside groove than you do on the outside, which is a slightly larger radius. And folks, even though the difference in radius is just a fraction of what the overall radius of the corner is, it does matter, AJ, and you see that high line sometimes able to get lined up all together and really make a charge, even though the shorter way around the racetrack is on the inside line.
Yeah, there's so many factors that go into which line can make a difference. We talked about aerodynamics earlier. Like you said, the radius makes a difference. If you think about it in terms of if you've ever been to a track or a high school track or anything like that, you know that if you are starting a race that you're in your lanes the whole way, whoever's on the outside is going to have a stagger towards the front because they have a longer way around if you were to start at all the same spot. So they have that stagger to set up. So yes, that outside lane is going further around, but then you also factor in that the fact that the outside lane has the banking. So when they're coming down off the banking, you can gather a little bit of extra momentum coming down off the banking, which is why I would say usually the inside line pulls up a little bit in the corners. Then once you come off the corner, that outside line tends to make a little bit of a move. Obviously aerodynamics play a big part of it. But the other thing too is that bottom line, like you said, scrubbing a little bit more speed, scrubbing a touch bit more tires, which aren't usually a huge factor at Daytona, but can become a big factor if you're on super old tires at the very end. The top line is also using a little bit more fuel. You're into the throttle a little bit more. You're also taking the longer distance around. So there's a lot of little things that can play as to which line is better, which line feels better individually. It's really all personal preference, as well as I would like to mention that the bottom line, like we said when we were riding on board, you can see that yellow line below you. When you're following in the top line, the wall is really your only reference other than the cars below you. You cannot see that yellow line very much at all when you're up at the top. So, well, like we've mentioned, so far these guys keeping it nice and orderly. We're 18 laps into this one already with 22 to go. We've had yep.
Wow, the number 9 machine of Adam Hogland just had a huge moment there going through the tri-oval. You just had to open your mouth there, AJ. And Adam, you can see him losing the draft. That is not good news for that number 9 machine. We'll go back and catch this one here on the 3-wide TV replay. Going into the tri-oval right here, I think he just gets a little bit loose here, goes down to that yellow line, and back in the NASCAR Racing 2003 days, we always used to complain about something called paint grip because it was a factor. You could actually change the grip level on the paint. And that number 9 machine of Hogland, I think he got down in the paint right there. In fact, he's going to come down pit road here. There's a couple of other drivers headed down pit road right now with him. And let's see if we can kind of figure out who that is. That's Larry Orn in the 31, Todd Kirkwood, Jared Haggerty, Nick Curling, and Adam Hogland there right at the tail end of that group here. AJ, right at the halfway mark, coming down. We think this will be their one and only pit stop. So maybe just thinking, let's get off strategy here.
Yeah, I think these guys are taking tires too from the looks of it on pit road. So definitely a couple cars wanting to go off strategy. Don't know if they have any sort of communication, if they had planned this. Obviously for Hogland, who had the mistake, this is actually perfect for him because otherwise he had lost the draft. This allows him to come down pit road, get back into the draft. And if these guys do come out in front of the leaders, they can line up and be very fast. We'll have to see how they blend around the track as these leaders are screaming around nearly 200 miles an hour. But if you can get in front of the leaders off of a pit stop, you can actually hook up and be slightly faster than that 2 wide pack. And it could pay dividends later on in the race when everybody else has to come around and make a stop. And plus, their stop is already done now. So if there were to be a caution, they do not have to pit again. They can cycle up to the front. So if they can, it looks like they are staying out ahead of the leaders. This could play off if they can get hooked up and get some lap times clicking off.
Yeah, that is for sure. So we'll keep an eye on Larry Orn's led group as of right now. But meanwhile, back up at the front of the field, we continue to be side by side like we have been now for probably the last 5 to 10 laps here between the number 16 of Gardner as well as the number 3 Mobile right to his outside. Kevin Klein there in the number 4 right behind him. So definitely interesting to see this change in strategy. We'll see exactly how it all works out. But you know what? They might be thinking about possibly the big one happening, because if that big one happens and they can stay on the lead lap, A, they won't be involved in the big wreck, and B, they'll have a bunch of cars out in front of them, which will make their life a lot easier. And they are currently on the lead lap, but they just went past the start finish line, so they're not a whole lot in front of this lead pack, but they are all lined up together, and that will definitely help AJ.
Yeah. Now that they've gotten all lined up, it took a couple laps for them to actually get lined up. When you come out of pit road, you kind of have that little bit of a stagger, and you want everybody to be able to catch up, especially if you are trying to work together. So it took a little bit for them to get situated, but now that they are situated, they should be able to at least put in similar laps, if not faster laps, over the course of this race. But yeah, there's multiple factors in there, including the fact that you could be faster, pit road cycle if there is a caution, and like you said, you're not driving behind these people if there's a caution as well. So it did thin out each of these groups, and like we said, top 8 is what puts you into it. Well, right now the front group is the top 11, so currently out of that front group only 3 would not be there. Out of the group that pitted, those 5 drivers are currently at the tail end of the lead lap, trying to hold on and pick up some steam here and get some good lap times. That last lap, the leader Larry Orn of that back end group was about 0.3 slower than the leader, and at this point the leader might end up getting a little bit of their draft pretty soon here, which would be disastrous for the people who have already pitted if that leader can get that draft suck up and get past them.
Yeah, definitely. And you can see Larry Orn right there, and Joshua Biddle, who's the next car in front of him in the 11th position. You can kind of see that just that delta between them. Last time by, Joshua Biddle ran a 45.472. We'll have to wait for Larry Orn's lap time to update, but Biddle is lapping just a little bit faster than that group of 5 cars right now, led by Larry Orn. So that's not going to be good for that group, but they are going to be out of the hornet's nest once that front group of cars does elect to come down pit road for their one and only pit stop. But a caution flag could change everything, and we almost had it up at the front of the field. The snaking got a little bit I don't know, a little bit too rough for my liking, as Michael Larch right there in the number 3 machine is now gotten to the front of the inside groove, finally was able to get in front of Nick Gardner and clear him. But now here comes Kevin Klein in the number 4 machine to lead the high line as things continue to ebb and flow here at Daytona. Yeah,
with that little bit of contact up at the front, that allowed the other group to be a slight bit faster. Larry Orn had a 45.49. Meanwhile, Nick Gardner at the old front of the other group had a 45.69. So these guys almost equaling out now on lap times, and that other group might have just gotten themselves in straight enough to be able to pull away. But yeah, this front group getting a little bit more active. I think they also know that pit stops might be coming up soon, and you want as good of a position as you can going into pit road so that hopefully you can be leading the exiters of pit road instead of at the tail end and potentially losing the draft.
Yeah, that is for sure. So we'll just have to wait and see how it all continues to cycle out. We got some interesting people in the chat. I really like Corey Silva's post. I am heard. he made himself heard, that's for sure. Tim Knott also in the chat with Gunskins. Doug Mullins in the chat. We got a couple of comments on the new graphics that we're showing you here tonight on 3Y TV. Definitely, I'm enjoying them as well. Great to have a few new graphics for this season that we'll have all season long. So hopefully you're enjoying them here on the channel. And make sure to give the video a like. Let's see if we can get a like spike. We have 7 thumbs up right now. Let's see if we can bump that number up just a little bit more. And we recently hit 700 subscribers here on the 3Y TV channel. So definitely great to have that as well. And then as well as some of the other series sponsors that we have on board. You see one up there in the top left-hand corner of your screen right there, Sim Speed Shop jumping on board. Of course, they're going to be sponsoring some of the other series that American Sim Racing Series runs beyond the Premier Cup Series here. Of course, that's brought to you by Hacksaw PCs. You got DB Sim Racing up there in the top left-hand corner of the screen. And I got to say, AJ, there's a lot of people that come together to make these races what they are. And to really put on a spectacular show for the fans is now up at the front. We're pretty much single file all the way back to Joshua Biddle.
Yeah, these guys might be single file knowing that a pit stop is potentially on the way. But like you said, there's a lot of people that make this series possible. And so a huge thank you to all those people. And ultimately, it would not be possible without the racers. I mention it each week, but thanks to you guys as well for putting on the broadcast. It also helps to draw in sponsorships and racers when these races are broadcasted, and especially as well as they are on 3Y TV. So I know I'm in the booth today, so I'm one of you, but I also want to say thank you to you guys for all the work that you do. And it's very an honor for me to be able to be up here in the booth and help out and help with the broadcast here today. But like you said, we have a lot of single file racing going on right here. And one half that have already pitted and one half that have not, and it'll be interesting to see how this strategy plays out.
Jim Foose in the chat is claiming bingo in the bingo cards that they set up prior to these 2 duels here tonight. And Michael Krobach is now calling him out on it, saying, I call BS. So we'll see. Jim, you have to prove you got bingo here tonight. We did have green flag pit stops. I think that was one of the things on the bingo card. So perhaps he does have bingo. So Jim, prove it. We'll wait. We'll find out. We'll find out whether or not you're telling the truth or not. But we do have 10 more laps to go here in the first of the Hacksaw PC's Road to Premier Duels at Daytona. All clean and green so far, but we know pit stops are pending for your race leaders, which could change everything here tonight.
Yeah, pit stops are pending. These 2 groups have been very even on their lap times, lap after lap, just a little bit here and there, forward and backwards between the 2 groups. But not only there are pit stops left to do, but pit road can be a treacherous place just getting onto it. We have seen incidents where people will bump each other and slide around trying to get down into pit road, as well as people missing their box. Your tires are a little bit more worn than you think they are, especially driving down pit road at 55 mile an hour, that sometimes you can slide through your box. I've been guilty of it before myself, and it can really ruin your race. So a lot of action still left to be had. We are working lap 32 here of this first duel here at Daytona.
Absolutely. Michael Larch right now in the number 3 machine continues to lead over the number 16 of Nick Gardner, who has led a good handful of laps here tonight, and definitely been some very strong running as well. Scott Eckrick in the number 70 machine. Scott Eckrick, excuse me. Kevin Klein there in 4th. Adam Blettel now in the 5th position. Good job for him, because I believe he was one of the drivers who started pretty much last in fact, he was shotgun of the field in this first duel in that number 7 machine. So he is going to try and work his way up into the race from the back, and that is so far so good. A good showing for that number 7 machine. Jeff Yenish in the number 89 machine. They're running in 6th. Of course, he was the Midwest Simulations Pole Award winner earlier in the night, so we know that he already has a ticket into next week's race, but he's out there learning things, AJ, and that's one thing that you're up here in the booth. I'm sure you're learning a few things as well as the people we got in the chat tonight.
Yeah, and I'm learning even more with these dual strategies that are going on, as well as the people in the chat are probably seeing and waiting how this is going to work out, knowing that this could have implications on how we try to drive it next week. Like I said, right now, these guys have been very even between the two groups. Not really sure which one is going to be able to come away on top, but both groups have very much single filed. You mentioned the 7 car of Boitel. We had followed him at the very back of the pack, just kind of biding his time, and currently he is up in 5th. 5th place of that group, and then 5th place overall in the race, currently in a transfer spot. And he was riding back there in about 15th earlier on in this thing. So there's a lot of movement that can happen and will happen over the course of this race. And this is also a situation where you would much rather be Yenish or somebody who is already locked in based on your qualifying result, because you're a little bit less worried about how these two different strategies might play out.
Noble Warrior 88 in the chat says, gonna wait as long as possible now, and that would be to coming down the pit road, because we are ever closing in on that lap number 40, just 6 more laps to go. Michael Krobach did go back and say that he believed that his number was a truck number, not a Cup Series number, so it could differ just a little bit, but with some cars already coming down pit road, that definitely indicates that they didn't think they could make it all 40. Will they come down this lap, AJ?
I don't know, and that's the crazy thing too right now. This group that has not pitted yet, as we see one peel off down into pit road. I'm still not used to paint schemes, so we do see a couple of them peel off. You wonder if the next group will come into the next lap, but you don't know if any of these guys were single file trying to save fuel as well, with the potential to make it. But we do see Anthony Pelican, Nick Gardner, Jonathan Holstein, Joshua Biddle, all down pit road here in from that first group. And I do think one of the cars was actually might have been sputtering on the way in, or trying to just coast it in as much as possible. So this front group we would expect to see then within the next lap or two at that point. But this is coming down very much to the end, and we'll see how these two groups blend. Remember, that group that had already pitted is at full steam ahead down the super speedway as we see the remaining of that front group pit.
Yeah, a whole bunch of more cars coming down pit road. You can see it right there. A couple of cars locking them up. I think Michael Larch in the number 3 machine locked him up. Scott Eckerick as well. Kevin Klein on pit road. Adam Littell, Mark Myers in the 04, who we saw last year here in the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series. And whoa, the number 4 machine of Kevin Klein might have just blown it. I think he got into the inside wall. Very easy to do here at Daytona with the brake package. He's going to be down and away, but with that left front damage, you can see he's not going to be the first one off pit road. Meanwhile, Michael Larch, the number 3 machine who was leading the race, pit road speeding penalty on the number 3 machine. That is going to shoot himself in the foot in that one. Kevin Klein at least is able to get back up there onto the racing surface, even though he has a little bit of damage on the number 4 machine. It's going to be interesting to see exactly who's going to make it. Meanwhile, Jeff and Steve Yenishes, the Yenishes up at the front of the field. They're staying out there on the racetrack. 3 laps to go. We expect to see them on pit road this time. Surely they can't make it. Adam Blattell in the number 7 machine, I believe he might have picked up a speeding penalty as well. His pit stop time in the number 7, 39.4 seconds. Kevin Klein had a very long stop as well, but Michael Larch in the number 3, the longest stop, definite pit road speeding penalty on the number 3 machine, which could ruin an absolute stellar night. Now we're going to see how this all continues to cycle out. Scott Eckerick in the number 70, great pit stop. He's got a huge advantage out there as Michael Larch now coming back out onto the racetrack finally after having to wait in his pit box for 50 seconds, folks.
Yeah, that speeding penalty is really killer, and like I said, it's a little bit harder to get onto the brakes. You mentioned the brake package. I've mentioned tires earlier. We see these front 2 of the Yenishes still going. Jeff is locked in based on his qualifying point. He is leading Steve, and I wonder if he's trying to lead to save fuel. It looks like Steve is backing off, trying to be as light on the throttle as possible. He probably is trying to make this to the end. I don't know if it'll work out, but here we are coming down to the end. They're going to be coming to the white flag this time around. Jeff is already locked in and is currently pulling down into pit road. It's going to be Steve right now who's going to see if he can make it. He has a little bit of draft help as well from Adam Blittel right in front of him.
Jeff Yanish knew that he had the Midwest Simulations Pole Award, so he was already locked into the show, trying to get Steve locked into the show here, trying to just give him enough fuel, AJ, to get him across the start-finish line. Jeff's going to head down the backstretch. He's going 100. He's out of fuel. He's out of fuel. You can see that number 32 machine. He's slowing down. AJ, he has to get it into neutral here to try and get that car back to the line. He's already slowed down to 100. He's picked it back up. We thought he was out of fuel. He's going 142 miles an hour. He's playing with the commentators here. Where is the rest of the field?
The leaders are coming out of 2. I think he's for sure got this win wrapped up, so then it's going to be how does the rest of the top 8 play out. But what a fuel save strategy by Steve Yanish to be able to make it in, winning first place at a slow Alexander Rossi-like win. And how does the rest of this field shake up?
Anthony Pelican in the number 78 machine, who had the world's craziest pit stop. Pelican came into pit road with the GT3 pit marker to get down to his pit speed. He's going to get in second spot after he passes Yanish. Nick Gardner's going to come home third. Scott Eckert, Jonathan Holstein going to come home sixth. Joshua Biddle coming home in fifth. Wow. Caution-free race, and somehow Steve Yanish in the 32 was able to get it to the line. That's going to be an interesting one, AJ. Now we're going to find out if anyone can replicate that in race number 2. Wow.
That was my first thought is, all these other guys are watching in the chat and now are interested if they could potentially do the same thing. I don't know if they will be able to, because obviously the Yanishes had that plan probably the whole time in order to make it that long, and they had each other as a partner. But wow, that was a fantastic fuel save effort. And I am very much a fuel save guy myself, and I am very astonished with Steve Yanish, who was able to save enough fuel in the 32 car to win that race by 17 seconds. And second place, you can see on your screen, was Anthony Pelican leading that next group, 17 seconds behind, but was able to come in second. Nick Gardner in third, Scott Eckrich in fourth, Joshua Biddle in fifth, Jonathan Holstein sixth, Mark Myers seventh, and Larry Orn eighth to round out the people who have made it on into the next round, for sure.
It's not every day, folks, that you see someone winning at Daytona by 17 seconds, at least not on the oval. Maybe on the road course, but not on the oval. That is absolutely one crazy strategy that worked out for Steve Yanish. But as you can see, all the cars now lining up for heat number 2. This is the second duel here tonight. Another 40 laps here to sort out the field for next week's Hacksaw PC's Daytona opener right here on 3 Wide TV. And well, starting on the pole, John Eckert in the number 45 machine. Alongside him will be the number 99 Clarence Bonner, of course, very familiar to the series. Starting in third will be Jackson Van Valkenburg. Jordan Harnish alongside him on row number 2. Gary Reynolds Jr. in the number 13 with Danny Gutierrez to his outside. Corey Silva in the number 94 will roll off in 7th. Evan Black 8th. 9th goes to Thomas George. 10th, John Broussard. 11th position goes to Richard Fletcher, one of the Wilversa Racing machines. Kevin Stone will be rolling off in 12th, Grant Brown 13th, 14th position Jamie Moore, and rounding out the field for duel number 2, the number 30 of Jeremy Banning. But definitely a lot of drivers, they're going to try and figure out, they're going to try and interpret what they just saw and put that into action. AJ, do you think we're going to see a lot of drivers just try and go 3/4 throttle for the entirety of this race?
I mean, it's possible. We've also been caution-free now through one duel with one more remaining. This one also has one less car, having 15 here ready to take the green flag. But man, my head is spinning before I start any race in the ASRS series, and I couldn't imagine how much my head would be spinning after watching that race. One thing to also note is that the cars that pitted early, halfway through the race, Larry Orn was the only one in the top 8. The remaining ones were behind him. It was mostly the people who pitted at the very end that ended up coming away in front. So that early stop did not end up paying out. Now, did they not get bunched up well enough? What was it that caused that? What will be the strategy today as duel number 2 goes green and John Eckert leads the field to the green flag?
Flag in the air already for heat number 2, duel number 2, if you will, here. And it is your pole sitter for this heat, John Eckert, already out and underway with Jackson Van Valkenburg right behind him in the Pepsi machine. And that outside line now just trying to get formed up. Clarence Bonner out there with a little bit of help from behind. I believe that's the number 27 machine of Jordan Harnish, who's locked up underneath the back end of that number 99 as they go off into turn number 3 and 4. And that outside line with that big push from Harnish almost was able to clear the number 45 as they went off into turn number 3, but not able to do so. Will be side by side for lap number 1.
Yeah, and we mentioned, obviously, we just saw that amazing fuel save, and already all but 4 cars have situated themselves onto the bottom. You wonder if they're getting to the bottom, getting in the draft and trying to save fuel, or if they're just trying to ride this out. Because right now, really all bets are out the window. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but all we know right now is that the front 2 are side by side for the lead. Clarence Bonner on the outside, getting a push from the number 27 of Jordan Harnish. One of the other things for me is to learn new numbers on top of potentially new paint schemes, new people, all that sort of stuff. Jordan Harnish, I believe, is one of those number changes going into this year of 2021. But already now all but 2 of the cars are on the bottom as Harnish and Bonner were able to push their way up the outside to the bottom. But with nobody being on the outside other than these 2, if they can get hooked up, they can really shoot their way all the way up to the front, nearly as far as they want. But currently, like we said, Bonner and Harnish are up front leading that bottom line.
Yeah, we do have the number 53 machine of John Broussard. Gonna see if maybe I can do a little bit of sleuthing, but that number 53 machine is well off the back of the pack. Maybe he's thinking, well, you know what, heat number 1, duel number 1 was very quiet. Maybe duel number 2 is going to be very racy, but that number 53 machine, he's all by himself, and that does not bode well, as we're getting word that he started from pit road, and that is the reason why he is currently running in the 15th position, well off the back of the pack as he runs down through turn number 4 right now. The field already going off into
We'll definitely need a caution in order to get back into this thing. And if you're one of these top 14 cars, you don't necessarily mind, because that thins out the field just a little bit more to try to make it up into the top 8.
Absolutely. We are getting word from race control about unofficial qualifiers for the race here tonight. The first one, of course, is going to be the number 32 machine of Steph Jenisch. Secondly, the number 78 of Anthony Pelican is also going to get in with that very stellar pit road entry that was able to see him jump up about 4 or 5 spots. The number 16 Mobile Nick Gardner also qualifying. The 70 of Scott Eckrick also working his way in. The 80, that is Joshua Biddle. The 73, Jonathan Holstein. The 04, of course, driven by Mark Myers. And then I do believe that the 89 of Jeff Jenisch is going to have to work his way in. Of course, he did win the Midwest Simulations Pole Award. The 31 also going to work his way in based off of qualifying time, and that being Larry Orn. And the number 10 of Nick Curling. Of course, those numbers are unofficial, so we're going to have to wait for everything to sort itself out for those to go official. But at least, AJ, we do know a couple of the drivers racing their way in here tonight. That is always good, and hopefully we can see that again here in duel number 2 with a lot of green flag racing. So far, so good.
Yeah, part of the field is pretty much already locked in, like we said, from that Heat 1, Heat 2 right now, racing to try to find their way in, with their minds racing from the strategy. Already everybody single file up here in the front, potentially trying to save fuel. Not good if you're trying to save fuel if you're Clarence Bonner up front or Jordan Harnish, the pusher. But if you are somebody further in the back, that is a great fuel position save to be in. Only working lap 7 here of this 40-lap Heat 2. Lots that could still happen. Obviously, we barely even made it on fuel the last time. Some people were running out, so even saving an extra little bit of 5 seconds of gas could mean the difference if all these guys end up going for that strategy.
Is definitely true, as you see the number 99 continue to pace the field as of right now, with Jordan Harnish right behind him in the number 27 machine, and John Eckhart in the 45 is going to be running right there in third, with Jackson Van Valkenburg fourth. So pretty much your top four, just about how they qualified here in duel number 2, working their way now on to lap number 8. Already 7 laps in the books, and this is really clicking off faster than I was expecting to, and perhaps it's due to the smaller field here tonight, AJ, but definitely great to have green flag running. That bodes well for the start of the Hacksaw PC's premier season.
Yeah, green flag running is always what is preferred, especially because then you don't have to log laps around a 2.5 mile track. So very much preferred. Those guys in the first heat are very thankful for that, not having to run a bunch of pace laps. Second heat looking to do the same, and all of us who are watching here on the sidelines hoping for another green flag run in the later race, knowing that then you can play strategies, play different ways that you want to pit, try to hook up separately or all in one or whatever you want to do. But ultimately, it's much better than running pace laps around the 2.5 mile Daytona Motor Speedway, or International Speedway, excuse me. But right now, all these guys single file, presumably on the fuel save strategy, especially with how much they are separated from each other. There's a decent bit of gap between every single driver out there on the track. We did see a quick blink there from Clarence Bonner, but ultimately everything is okay. Going forward, working lap 9.
Lap 9, and about to be working lap number 10 here at Daytona as we go across the start-finish line once again. That number 99, Clarence Bonner, leading yet another lap up at the front of the field, as we got a couple of cars a little bit further back having a little bit of a wiggle. I think that was Grant Brown in the 00 machine, who might have just had a quick wiggle in the 00, but he gets it pointed in the right direction, now headed down the backstretch. And that's a little bit of that snaking that we talked about a little bit earlier in the night here at Daytona, really with Grant Brown. I think that's the reason why he went down below the double yellow line. But you think about that double yellow line, it almost caught out the number 9 machine of Adam Hogland there in race number 1. Now, he was able to recover, but not able to recover enough to get into the show next week. But definitely was a very interesting race number 1. Wouldn't necessarily say it was action-packed with a lot of green flag running, but at least it seemed like there was more double file than in this race. And perhaps, AJ, that's drivers thinking about saving fuel. They did see Steve Yenish do it in race number 1.
Yeah, it is very much perhaps strategy. We saw Yenish do it in race 1. We're wondering who's going to try it here in race 2. So far, I would think nearly everybody except for these front 2 of Bonner and Harnish. But we had mentioned that in that first group, Josh Biddle was one of the ones who was riding at the back, just kind of buying his time, ended up being 5th and qualifying onto the next round. So you look at some of these guys that are at the back of this one: Jeremy Banning, Richard Fletcher, Kevin Stone. Those are the 3 guys who are currently at the back of the group. Richard Fletcher being one of my Will Warser Racing teammates. But you wonder if these guys are thinking the same thing. These guys at the very back might actually be able to make the most amount of fuel mileage, just kind of riding back there, able to let off the gas more than nearly everybody in the field, or at least some of these front few. But lots of racing still here left to go in the second duel, and lots of people just buying their time, riding single file. Not very much action to speak about. So while we talk about all these different strategies, knowing what you usually do and what you've seen here today, what would you be doing in this situation, Peter?
Hey, you know what? I think I would want to be right now about where Grant Brown is, in my opinion. I would want to be mid-pack. Don't want to be up at the front, because up at the front you're going to be using a lot of fuel. Because even if you don't save enough fuel, AJ, you're going to be coming down pit road, and the less fuel you can take on, the better. And although iRacing kind of does do increments on how many or how much fuel you can take on, you want to be stopped in your box for as short as possible. I think where Grant Brown is, he's in a good spot. He's got enough cars in front of him that he can just kind of play with that throttle, not be full throttle, and just kind of stay in the draft, let it all naturally play out, save fuel as these laps continue to tick by. But I'm just really surprised there isn't more double file. They're all just staying single file, and that's not working out very well for John Broussard in the number 53 machine. Remember, he started from pit lane. Race leaders going off into turn number 1 and 2 right now. He's halfway down the backstretch going off into 3 and 4, so you'd expect maybe in about 12 laps or so, he will fall a lap down. I'm a bit surprised though, AJ. He seems to be doing pretty well out there by himself right now, lapping at about 185 miles an hour to Clarence Bonner, who's hustling it down the backstretch at almost 200 miles an hour in that number 99 machine.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, I think he is doing better than I would expect, probably because of how separated this front group is. They are all single file, but they're not stacked up single file. They're not trying to turn as fast as laps as possible. That last lap for Bonner was a 45.7, and I would say when the group was pitted early on and got single file, they were about 45.5, so about 2.5 tenths faster when they were all stacked up together. Meanwhile, Broussard doing a 47.8, so it is a pretty big difference. And if this front group does end up catching him before a caution or before pit road, you will see the big difference, as they will be able to blow right by John Broussard, who was off the pace after starting on pit road.
So now we just have to wait and see whether we have any early adopters to pit road like we saw in race number 1, AJ. I think that's going to be a question that we'll probably answer here as we close in on the cross flags in duel number 2. So far, yet to see a caution flag here in tonight's Hacksaw PC's Road to Premier Duels. Jordan Harnish there in the number 27 machine, finally able to see these paint schemes. Got that Beef Jerky's Cheesecakes Emporium number 27 machine. But why don't we take a little bit of time here while we continue to watch this green flag racing to interview the winner of duel number 1. Just waiting to see if we can get him up here into the 3-wide TV booth. Let's see if we can drag him up here.
I do not even see him in the Discord.
Well,
looks like he has not shown up to the announcer's booth.
Well,
we want to know his fuel saving strategies. He doesn't want to give it up.
Yeah, that's just it. He's going to run away. He's in the show next week, AJ, so he doesn't want to give away his secrets. He doesn't want to give them away too early because he's going to want to win next week. But I can tell you what, it was definitely not full throttle. That is for sure. As these drivers continue to run single file through the field. Let's see if we can go through the field here and just kind of give everyone a lowdown now that we can see the paint schemes on their cars, so everyone at home can root on their favorite driver. There's the number 99, a Clarence Bonner right there with the retro-looking throwback scheme on that Hacksaw PC's number 99. Great-looking scheme. I love that look. Very similar to what Kyle Petty used to run back in the day with the all-black paint scheme. And running right behind him in the number 27, that is the Beef Jerky's Cheesecake Machine, another throwback paint scheme like Paul Menard used to run back in the day. And I don't believe Menard's is on the bingo card, so I'm sure there were some people upset about that. But that is a Menard's look-alike scheme. There's John Eckert in the number 45 machine, Eckhart, out of Madison, Alabama, right there, working his way. Great run in qualifying, and now running right there, still inside the top 3. Jackson Van Valkenburg in the number 12 machine, running right behind him. Good look on that race car this season. Gary Reynolds Jr. running in 5th right now in the number 13, right behind the number 12. So in numerical order as of right now, there is that 13. We'll see if that paint scheme evolves across the season. I believe that's the Trading Paints logo there on the hood of that number 13 Chevrolet. Back behind him, Danny Gutierrez is looks like maybe a little bit of blinking issues right up in front of them, but that is the BBBS Enterprises number 08 of Danny Gutierrez as he works his way now off towards turn number 1, currently sitting in the 6th position with Grant Brown in the 00 right behind him. You can see there is that diehard machine out of Prior Lake, Minnesota, up there in the many, many lakes of Minnesota. There's Corey Silva in the number 94. Car's not far in here to the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series. He was in it 2 years ago. And Corey Silva, great to be back out there in the American Sim Racing Series fold this year out of Plymouth, Massachusetts. And that race car right there, one of the few drivers who elected to put a picture on his page there, so hopefully we can get a couple extra drivers do that throughout this season. Evan Black in the number 92 machine right there, Joplin, Missouri. That number 92 running right there behind the number 94. I expect to see the 92 and the 94 here team up as the laps wind down. Those two teammates, we'll keep an eye on them. Kirkwood Enterprises right there on those cars as well. There's Jamie Moore, the 82. DNF on the side of that car, and I'll tell you what, AJ, I'm sure Jamie Moore doesn't want a DNF in this race.
No, this is definitely a race that you don't want a DNF in. You want to be able to finish the race and be top 8. We can see now Thomas J. George behind him with the snap-on machine there in the 88. And Kevin Stone is behind Thomas George. Cannot fully tell. My end of iRacing has not loaded up the proper paint scheme, so I'm trying to wait on the car to come around. Looks like Famucci on that car of the 17 of Kevin Stone. Behind him is Richard Fletcher. Now this one I do know, one of my teammates, he has the wine car as well as custom paints and die cast, so you can go to them and have a die cast of your car put on any sort, or your car's paint scheme on any sort of die cast. And then behind him is Jeremy Banning rounding out the front of that field. Looks like Amicus Rescue Systems. Sorry if I'm butchering anybody's names or anything wrong. And then further back in the pack, we have John Broussard getting closer to a lap down, but Toyota and Patriot median on his car in the 53. So that is our way through the field and a good look at all the paint schemes, and it'll be interesting, like you've said, to see how these things evolve over the course of the year. But we are 22 laps into this one. Clarence Bonner still out front with Jordan Harnish pushing him, and been a little bit more aggressive with the push. They've opened up almost 5/10 lead on third place, which is not really a big issue, but a little bit ahead.
Yeah, we do have a question in the chat, I believe, from Woody Mahan asking, what's the diecast thing? And Woody, that is, you can get your custom car, your iRacing paint scheme actually put onto a diecast with the custom paints and diecast right there on the Mac of the number 43 machine. Your paint on a diecast order today, so make sure you check that out with Richard Fletcher and that number 43 Woolhorse Racing machine. Great to have that car right there on the racetrack. There's some very cool sponsors this season here in the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series, so make sure you go check them out, as well as our friends over at Hacksaw PCs. He will be, Nick Travaglia will be debuting a new website here, which is definitely something to come up. I think Peter is dying. How am I dying, folks?
As we do have the leaders, you can see right there passing John Broussard down to the inside. Broussard now a lap down. But these leaders, Jordan Harnish has pushed Clarence Bonner out to a large lead, has been hooked onto the back of Bonner and pushed them way out in front of the next group. The little bit of draft also helps. They get a little bit wiggly here through the corner. Maybe a little bit too much pushing, but those guys are crazy. But look at this delta at the bottom right of your screen. Pulled out a huge, up to a 1.8 second lead right now. A little bit of draft probably helped off of the back of Broussard, but these guys are flying up to 3.4 seconds now on the rest of the pack. So you would think that these two guys are thinking, we're going to get out as far as we can, pit, and then try to run as hard as we can in the second half of this stint.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they have to be doing, right? Because Harnish now has almost a 4-second gap to the cars behind. I mean, definitely Eckhart right there in the 45 is definitely thinking about what we saw out of Yenish, Steve Yenish in race number 1, making it all 40 laps. And meanwhile, the front two says, you know what? We're not going to make it. If you're in the front two, AJ, you can't save fuel. You just don't have the opportunity to do so. So Bonner and Harnish, they said, you know what? We're just going to have to go as hard as we can to get as big of a lead as possible, because if they come down pit road and everyone else stays out, they're toast. They're done. There's no way they will be able to make up that deficit, especially when you come down pit road, 55 miles an hour, you completely stop in your box for a couple of seconds to take on fuel. Meanwhile, everyone else is going almost 200 miles an hour around the racetrack. So that is, they say you're going about a football field a second at full speed here at Daytona.
Yeah, and I think also part of this too, though, is that Clarence Bonner and Jordan Harnish was not in the top 6 in qualifying, but I believe that the way that first group finished, Jordan Harnish and Clarence Bonner are both locked into the field for next week. So possibly they don't really care about this whole fuel save thing, because they don't need to push it too crazily to make it into the top 8. They want to run laps, maybe even be able to see, hey, what can we do working together in kind of a tandem? How fast can we go? Where does the engine blow up? Or knowing, hey, we want to have a pit stop so that way we can practice a pit stop. There could be multiple different reasons that these guys decided to do this, but they are both, I believe, locked into the field based on qualifying positioning and results from that first heat. So these guys don't have as much of a care for saving and trying to play the long game as the group behind them. But like you mentioned, back in that group behind them, the leader of that group now, of John Eckhart, is not in the greatest position. He is using the most fuel. Jackson van Valkenburg would be theoretically using the next most amount of fuel. They were in the draft early on in this thing, but here, working lap 29, they are no longer the draftees, or drafters. They are now the draftees.
Meanwhile, Clarence Bonner, Jordan Harnish, last time by, they ran 45.7 lap times. John Eckhart ran a 48.143. Folks, you do the math. That's 2.4 seconds. There you can see it at the bottom of your screen. That is just crazy at Daytona. The top two are up to an 11-second lead. We'll see what it's like this time by. Presumably, it will be another 2 to 2.5 seconds, which is just crazy. With 11 laps to go, folks, you do the math. If you can be 2.5 seconds faster for 11 laps, that is 27.5 seconds faster. Now, your pit stop delta time, we were looking at that at the last race in duel number 1, is about 32, 33 seconds. So it is possible, if that main draft continues to slow down and these two, the 99 and the 27, continue to just go flat out here, there's a slight chance. But even then, they're going to have to continue to turn out these laps, and that second group's going to have to continue to slow down. And one thing about iRacing, AJ, is that we have all these tools that monitor fuel usage. I have one that can estimate, based off of my fuel usage over the last couple of laps, how many laps I can go. iRacing has a built-in tool as well. It's not great. There are other tools that are better. And I know I have run out when iRacing has clearly told me I wasn't going to run out before. But all these drivers are going to be monitoring their fuel lap after lap after lap. But if you're the 99 and the 27, keep your foot flat right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned the time difference, but even just the sheer speed difference. These front guys, Clarence Bonner, currently was tracking 196 mile an hour while crossing the start-finish line, averaging in the upper 190s. Currently coming off of turn 4, John Eckhart currently at 182 mile an hour, slowly climbing now on the straightaway. But these guys going much slower than any sort of pack I've ever seen. You almost have to wonder if Eckhart's not full throttling it and everybody else just doesn't care because they want to save fuel. And I know that I have a track background, but this reminds me of a distance race. You always have the people that just run slowly, run in their pack, wait for the last kick right at the end to see what happens. And then you also have some of the people that say, hey, I'm going to go out and not run with this pack and try to run my race and see what happens. basically spreading out your energy, or your fuel in this case, over the course of the race. Obviously, they will have to stop up front, but this two different looks, and the fact that this second group is so much slower, currently under 180 going through turn 3 and 4, 179 coming out of 4 that time. They are running slower, a second slower almost than their qualifying laps, to put it into perspective, and they are in a pack in the draft. So that is how much these guys are letting off the gas and saving fuel. That last lap for Eckert, 48.66. His qualifying lap, 47.7. So he is 9/10 slower than his qualifying lap. That is unbelievable.
And last time by over 3 seconds, 3.1 seconds, folks. You do the math. That's 24 seconds in 8 laps. Now, we do know the top two, they're going for broke. They're going to have to come down pit road. We would think they'll be down pit road probably, I'd say, in the next 3 to 4 laps, AJ. But they're going for broke. They keep that pedal to the metal 3 seconds a lap faster at Daytona. You just don't hear that ever. Maybe you heard it back in the day when Bill Elliott was running his Ford Thunderbird that was narrower than all the other cars and was still legal, but you don't hear that nowadays. The race lead, the top two, 25 seconds now over John Eckhardt, which this whole deal, AJ, is just really putting into perspective how impressive Steve Yenish was in race number 1 as your leaders are coming down pit road. So this is going to be the interesting time. They're going to come down into their pit box. They did a good job. They also have John Broussard. Remember, he's a lap down after starting on pit road. He's with them. The field is now going off into turn number 3 and 4. Could this be a game of cat and mouse here on 3 Wide TV?
I mean, it could be, because these guys are going to be able to grab a couple gallons of fuel and then go full throttle at the back of the pack, doing exactly what they just did. As we can see, they grab fuel only there on pit road. These guys are going to be a little bit slidey now on older tires coming out, as this front group is going to come through at 100 mile an hour faster. But if these guys can get hooked up and get going, they could potentially catch up. And we don't even know if these front guys can make it on fuel now. Who has stayed out? They are starting to race, as some of these guys who were further back in the pack have saved enough fuel. That is Richard Fletcher flying up the outside. Wow, they were at the very back of that pack, folks. Those were the last 2 cars at the back of that pack, and they came flying around the outside to take the lead. Richard Fletcher up into the lead now, and you have to wonder how much fuel do these guys have. Fletcher already now going 190 down this straightaway, whereas they were going 180 before, just a couple laps ago.
Yeah, so now we really are going to start to see things shake out. Can Clarence Bonner and Jordan Harnish run the pack back down? They're going 195 miles an hour. They'll also pick up John Broussard in the number 53. That front pack is only going in the 180 mile an hour bracket. 5 more laps to go here at Daytona. If they can be just 3 seconds faster for 3 laps, they will be back in the lead. That is what we're talking about here, folks. That is that difference between the number 27 and the number 99 machine. This is going to be an interesting finish. I don't think I've ever seen a finish at Daytona quite like this one. But Richard Fletcher, he thinks he has enough fuel. But as I say that, he's going 182 miles an hour down the front stretch here. Meanwhile, we got the number 27 and the number 99. They're going 195.
I 100% believe that these two are going to be able to catch them and pass them over the rest of this race. The question is going to be when some of these groups are separating. We saw John Eckhardt was one of the ones who's been leading that second group. He is falling back, trying to save as much as he can. Meanwhile, Fletcher and Banning, who are currently up at the front, they were the ones at the very back saving as much fuel as possible. We do see there on your screen a issue with the number 17 car, Kevin Stone. Is slow on the backstretch. Not sure the exact reasoning for that, but he is slowed down on the backstretch, could potentially be out of fuel. As right now, Richard Fletcher, who was saving fuel at the very back, is flying up at the lead, but a hard charging Clarence Bonner and Jordan Harnish are 3 wide on the outside coming through the field.
3 wide on 3 Wide TV for the first time here tonight. The number 99 and the 27 pushing their way to the front, folks. They're already up to 5th and 6th. There's the number 17 continuing to coast. He is down to just 39 miles an hour. He might be out of fuel. Did he push it too far? I don't know. That could also bring out a caution. And if we have a caution, we could have a green-white checker, which might really throw some of these drivers into a loop. But here comes the 99 and the 27 machine. They are side by side now. Here comes the 99 with a big push from the number 27 machine. They have done it, folks. They have come down pit road. Every other driver yet to come down pit road, but somehow the 99 and the 27 scot-free up at the front of the field with now just 2 laps to go here at Daytona.
Yeah, 2 laps to go here at Daytona. They just took the lead. That is an outstanding strategy call by them to realize these guys are going too slow for it to matter, going, as we mentioned, 2 seconds, if not more, faster per lap. Currently, now it's going to see who has the fuel to make it to the end and is going to round out the top 8. Currently, that front group that you see, the very back of it is 9th on the track. So this is going to be a huge battle from that front group. Also, who's going to have the fuel to make it to the end, as we're going to come to the white flag down the straightaway this time around.
Big flag in the air. Kevin Stone in the number 17 is well off the pace. He is out of fuel. But now we look up at the front of the field as everyone has decided it's time to go. And Harnish throws a huge block on Jackson Van Valkenburg. Almost going around. There's a little bit of damage on both of those cars. They made contact right there going off into turn number 1. Racing finally picking up. These drivers realizing it's go time. Now, AJ, is any of these drivers going to run out of fuel?
I don't know for sure who, if any of them, can make it to the end. There are currently 10 cars in this front group. 9 of them are on the lead lap. Only 8 of them will for sure advance. This is going to be crazy. It looks like they're all going to make it, or at least enough to beat out the remaining group. They are 4 wide at the very front, nearly 4 wide. There's spinners up at the front. Clarence Bonner is going to go on to win this, and all of these guys are presumably going to make it on to the next round. But then we'll have to see how that moves through the mess. What a finish. What a strategy call. Clarence Bonner able to come out in the lead with Jordan Harnish in second.
What a move there at the end. 4 wide coming to the start-finish line. The number 88 machine was the one who went end over end with the barrel rolls getting just launched up into the air. But wow, we're going to have a lot of drivers with a lot of dinged up race cars at the end of that one. But Clarence Bonner, what a strategy call. What a race. I've never called a race at Daytona like this one. I don't think I'll see another one here again. But here is a replay of the run to the start-finish line. You see Richard Fletcher there going down below the apron in his number 43 machine. And now this is when they start to go 4 wide. Look at that's the number 12 of Jackson Van Valkenburg trying to shoot up through the middle, but there was contact between the 27 and the 12. There's that contact, maybe a tiny little bit of net code after making contact, and it was on from there. Look at Grant Brown in the 00. He tries to squeak his way through in the diehard machine, gets turned, and he gets launched up into the outside wall. But wow. That is one wild night here at Daytona, and a crazy way to wrap up and finish off duel number 2. This 2 caution-free races, AJ. Wow.
There is no hyperbole when I say I've never seen a race at Daytona like this. Both 40-lap races were caution-free. Obviously, the wreck at the very end of the second race, no caution came out. But I've never seen a cat and mouse game like that. This Daytona race is completely unbelievable. 4 wide coming towards the finish. As we pull up the results from Heat 2, Clarence Bonner is your winner. Jordan Harnish in second. They pulled out the strategy. Peter, take away the rest of it.
Yeah, Grant Brown finishing there in second. Jackson Van Valkenburg there in fourth. Richard Fletcher in fifth in the number 43 machine. This is really where things started to go south right there at the end with cars wrecking. Thomas J. George there finishing in sixth. Corey Silva in seventh. Jeremy Banning finishing in eighth. Evan Black finishing in ninth. Gary Reynolds Jr. there rounding out your top 10. Danny Gutierrez in the 11th position. Jamie Moore in 12th. John Eckhart the fourth there finishing in 13th. In the number 45 machine. Did he run out of fuel? He might have, finishing one lap down. John Broussard finishing one lap down after starting on pit road. And Kevin Stone, the 15th driver here tonight, he definitely ran out of fuel there in the closing laps in his race car. There was just barely able to coast it onto pit road, not bringing out the caution. But that is definitely, as we're about to lose a camera to a 737 there on the runway of the Daytona International Airport. Wild night. I mean, it's wild, but usually when we talk about wild at Daytona, we're talking about a bunch of big wrecks. But this is wild for completely different reasons, and it definitely speaks volumes to the quality of the drivers here in the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series.
Yeah, 2 fully green runs, lots of new people in the league, some returners, people who have been in years past, but some fantastic racing tonight. Obviously, much of that race was single file, but that allowed the strategy to play out. Those guys were single file, some of them saving fuel. Richard Fletcher and Jeremy Banning were at the very back of that front group very early on. Both of them finished in the top 8 after slingshotting around to the front, as well as others. I mean, saving fuel ended up being the thing, and that first group kind of showed it that. But at the same time, you wonder if any of them had gone with Clarence Bonner and Jordan Harnish, where would they be now? Because those guys were able to do it with just a kind of 2-car tandem. And what would it happen if there was even more of them? But that was an absolutely fantastic event. Heartbroken for the people who did not make the top 8 or did not make it onto the show next week. But there was many of other races left this year, and I'm excited to see all of these new guys in the league.
Yeah, without a doubt, definitely going to be a great season here on 3Y TV. Let's see if we can possibly dial up some of the finishers here tonight. I'd be interested to see if we can possibly get Jordan Harnish in the number 27 machine, because Harnish there definitely had a mad dash to the finish. Let's see if we can get Clarence Bonner as well. Let's see if we can talk first, AJ. Let's see if we can get the number 27 machine up here in to the booth. And AJ, we'll let you take it away with Jordan Harnish.
Yeah, we have Jordan Harnish here in the booth in the number 27. You came away second today, but you and Clarence Bonner decided about a third of the way through that race that you didn't want to ride around the field, the track at half throttle. Sorry, I could not talk after that wild finish. But you guys decided, we don't want to go half throttle. We want to go full throttle. We're going to push each other through. And it ended up paying out. You two were first and second. And when did you decide that? What was that decision like, and how did you make it work?
Surprisingly, Clarence and I are not on the same team this year. I joined LPM, so we weren't even in contact. But me knowing Clarence, like I know Clarence, I knew he was getting annoyed riding half throttle. I was getting annoyed riding half throttle. As the laps went on, we just kept getting slower and slower, and finally I just decided it was time to go. So I got on the bumper and pushed him. He didn't have any objection to it. It seemed like off we went.
Yeah, off you went into the sunset, playing a little bit of cat and mouse. Was there ever a point where you knew that you would get them, or did that not happen until after you pitted, after you came back out and you had the run?
When I looked down on I think it was lap 32 or 33, and saw we were over 25 seconds ahead of them, I figured we would be able to catch them at the rate they were going when we came out, no matter really where we came out. And it worked out perfectly in my head. We came out and caught them in 3 laps and just motored on by them, and honestly made them look foolish.
Yeah, and the last question I have is, does the fact that you and Clarence were both virtually locked into the field, you after the results of Heat 1, him based on qualifying time, did that play into the factor of, hey, let's differ from everybody?
Not in my head, it didn't. I mean, I'm here to race. I'm not here to ride around. It was really, like I said, it was really annoying to just sit there and ride around and not be able to do anything. So when it was go time for me, it was go time for me, and it wouldn't have made a difference if I was locked in or not, I don't think.
Well, your strategy decision certainly made it interesting up here in the booth, and I'm sure everybody else who is watching also agrees, as it gave a whole new storyline, something we've never really seen at Daytona before. So thank you for the extra drama, extra things to look at. And before we let you go, any sponsors, anything, shout outs you want to say?
Just got to thank my whole team at LPM, Beef Jerski's Cheesecakes, and I got one more. Hang on, let me think. I need to write these things down. Jordan Berry for the fantastic paint scheme he came up with.
Yeah, 2021 full of new sponsors, new people to thank. But thank you for providing some great racing here tonight, and excited to see what you, others, and myself can do here next week at Daytona.
I'm looking forward to it.
And I will now kick it back to Peter Short.
Yeah, we're gonna get Clarence Bonner up here into the chat as well after he was able to walk away with one of the strangest finishes I've ever seen here at Daytona. But Clarence, checkered flag fell for you in the number 99 machine. You led a ton of laps, just about the entire race, believe it or not, and walked away with a win with a very different strategy than the remainder of the field. Talk us through what was going through your head.
Well, after we saw one of the Yanish brothers make it on fuel on 40 laps in the first duel, we knew there were going to be some people trying to save fuel. Being the leader, you don't get to save much fuel at all, so I knew I was going to run it until it made sense not to and see what happened on the other side. Luckily, an ex-teammate of mine, and now we're in better spirits 2021, he's not wrecking me every week. Jordan had the same plan, and if you can run 4 seconds faster than people, you're going to lap them twice. I've never seen such a field of people afraid to go fast.
Well, you definitely did the math on that one, and it thoroughly worked out for both you and the number 27 machine of Jordan Harnish. Gonna be one where, perhaps we're gonna see something different next week. I think a lot of people probably step back, stall what Steve did in race number 1, said, I'm gonna do that in race number 2 because that worked in race number 1. But now we're gonna have a bunch of people for next week's race going, I don't know what to do. What did you learn tonight?
Well, tires aren't as important as they were at Talladega last year. Outside of getting on the apron, we never got aero tight, aero loose, and nothing got weird. Cars didn't feel weird side to side. So right now we got a real stable package, and it seems like a smaller pack is faster than a large one right now. So it'll be interesting to see what teams and manufacturer alliances come together next week.
Definitely going to be a fun one next week to start off the season, and it's going to be a long season, Clarence. You know the drill here in the American Sim Racing Series. What are you looking forward to in 2021 for you in the number 99 machine?
More finishes. That and hopefully a more reliable work schedule. I'd like to run every race this year.
Yeah, definitely great each and every week here in the American Sim Racing Series, Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series. And I know for a lot of the drivers in tonight's race, it's just an honor to be a part of this Premier Cup Series with the vetting that goes on for this drivers and the road to Premier. And for a lot of drivers, tonight is the capstone. But Clarence, you know the drill here on 3 Wide TV. You've been with us now for a couple seasons as part of the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series. So let us hear those shout outs that you have for us tonight.
Obviously we debuted a new paint tonight for Hacksaw PCs. It's a throwback to a Jeff Gordon special. I'd also like to thank Patriot Marketing Services, Kirkwood Enterprises, Beef Jerky Cheesecake, Mod Chaser Media. I'd like to say hi to my mom and Free Mitch 2021.
Definitely. Well, folks, it's the big one next week at Daytona to start off the season. And Clarence Bonner, hopefully you can keep this momentum rolling. And perhaps we'll get to talk to you up here in the booth again next week for the big one. All right. Well, AJ, definitely a wild night for many different reasons here at Daytona. And wrecking really wasn't one of them until right there at the end of the race when, it's the big one happened right there across the start-finish line. So, AJ, definitely going to be fun to see you on track next week here at Daytona.
Yeah, thank you guys for allowing me to be up in the booth here tonight. So much action and things to look at that I didn't get to do as much quote-unquote scouting as I had initially hoped for, but I had a ton of fun up here in the booth helping you guys out here on 3 Wide TV, and really excited to get back into the car and kick off this 2021 season. It's been a short, long off season, if that makes sense, and I'm really excited to get back into the car. This 14 car with Will Warsaw Racing is going to be a blast, and I really only ever had one or two super speedway experiences with teammates ever in my life, and those were both last year. So I'm excited to be able to turn that into true teammates here this year with Will Warsaw Racing, and hopefully put on a good or as good or better of a show than we had here tonight. But it was a fantastic night up here in the booth, and I thank you guys again for letting me in and let me talk and blabble my mouth for the couple hours here of racing.
That is for sure. Before we go, I want to give a big shout out to the series sponsor, Hacksaw PCs, for making this series possible, as well as Sim Speed Shop, as well, American Regardless, DB Sim Racing, and everyone here that helps put together the Hacksaw PCs Premier Cup Series for the American Sim Racing Series. Best of luck next week, AJ, here at Daytona. Definitely going to be a fun one to watch, so you don't want to miss it right here on the channel, 9 o'clock Eastern next Wednesday night. And remember, folks, we're here on Wednesday nights this season, all season long here for the American Sim Racing Series. So you want to hit that notification bell as well as the subscribe button. We recently hit 700 subscribers here on the channel, so let's see if we can bump that number up a little bit more, as well as smack that like button before you close the door. Big shout out to our friends over at Sim TV for the camera angles that we bring you each and every week here on the channel for every single race. Big, huge shout out to them for making this all possible. But folks, like I said, you don't want to miss more Daytona action next week right here on the channel, so make sure you're there. But until then, see ya!